the British were not keeping up with us. They just never developed the ability to move the way the American Army did. Probably a lack of equipment. Anyway, the Americans broadened their front to the north, and which would be to our left, and took a bunch of the ground that the British were theoretically supposed to take, and they were going to occupy after the war ended. And this is the area the 561st was in. First of all, it wasn't American ground that Hap was killed on. It was British, supposedly British territory in Germany. And then when Truman and Stalin got together in that Potsdam conference, and the hue and cry from the American public to get a piece of Berlin came up, Truman traded some of this very wealthy, rich farmland of the Magdeburg area, which was east of the Elbe River. I take that back, which west of the Elbe River. See, our combat forces moved to the Elbe River, but then some of that area that we occupied was traded to Stalin for East Germany in exchange for whatever rights we got in Berlin. So in our famous reunion, to get back to the road that Captain Holiday was killed on, we had to get into East Germany and get a visa and all that folderol. Anyway, we had our Volkswagen bus, and we ran around that country looking for the road that Captain Holiday was killed on, and we couldn't find it. One of the things was that we couldn't recognize it because immediately after the war, the Germans had planted a row of trees on each side of the road, and they'd grown up in 30 years to be good-sized trees, and we knew that there weren't any trees on the road that Hap Holiday was killed on. But we finally got that straightened out. I mean, it took us, I guess, a couple of hours to recognize that. But we finally got back to the little Y that I had been on as far as I got into that action. And Charlie Turner was there, and I said, Charlie, I said, here's where I was standing when you come over that hill. I said, without your pistol. Now, Charlie Turner, of course, over the years, I knew him well in combat, and I've maintained an association with him, and I have the highest regard for his integrity. He has an integrity that, well, on a scale of 1 to 10 is 9.5, I'll tell you. He wouldn't prevaricate or violate the truth in any manner. It's just not his style at all. And when I said, Charlie, here's where you come over the hill without your pistol, he looked at me just as seriously, and he said, Stegner, he said, I didn't lose my pistol. And I recognized immediately that whether he lost his pistol or whether he didn't, nothing would ever change his mind about it, and I dropped the subject just like that. I had no desire to pursue an argument with Charlie Turner, although in my own mind I was satisfied I was right, and I maintained that because I was not under the duress or the stress that he was at the time, my memory would probably be a little bit more accurate. But one thing that trip did prove is that human memories are very fallible. We more often than not could not agree on exactly what had happened in different places with different people that were involved in the same thing. We'd have two different recollections of the thing, and I think it's just a classic example of the frailty of human memory. That's about all I have to say about the action that your father lost his life in. Only one thing further. The next day, I don't know what time, maybe 10, 11 o'clock, and I went back up there, and I think Turner was with me, but I'm not sure. I believe Donzie was also along. Now, as I was saying, the next morning after the ambush that Hap Holliday lost his life in, I went back up to that area, and I don't remember who all was along. It seems to me that, as I say, Turner and maybe Donzie, or I'm quite sure Donzie was along. But we were wondering exactly where it was that Hap Holliday had been killed, and there was quite a lot of junk on the road one way or another, and we came upon Hap Holliday's helmet, steel helmet, inside of which he had taped a picture of his wife and baby son. And I regretted that afternoon that I hadn't picked up that helmet. We didn't pick it up. Don't ask me why. Just one of those things that, well, we had really not that much experience on what to do and a lot of things, and in any event, it stands out in my memory that that helmet was laying there in the ditch of the road, and it was a pretty sad day for all of us. I guess I could explain all of the equipment that, like Hap's Jeep, I'm sure that he stepped out of it, and somebody right close to him opened up on him with a German burp gun and killed him. Killed Hap and his driver and his first sergeant and his battery clerk. The Jeep was full because at that time it was a kind of a picnic to go on those advanced parties. It had been for a week or two, and they had no reason to believe this would be any different. When we were back the next morning, in fact that afternoon, I think the German probably picked up everything that would move, and certainly there was no evidence the next morning of Hap's Jeep being there or the trailer that he was pulling with his Jeep. That was of primary concern to me. It included all of my souvenirs of the war and the maps I'd picked up, and of course all the clothes except the ones I were wearing. But there was no evidence of any of that equipment, although a couple of the vehicles from the convoy, the advance party, had been damaged to a point where they weren't movable, and they were still there. The lead vehicle was there, pretty badly blown up. They hit it with a couple of Panzerfaust. All those things are, of course, that's 40 years ago, you know, and it's hard to remember. Incidentally, today is the 15th of September, 1985, and it gives you a graphic explanation of how organized I've been on making this tape. I get started at it, and then I come to the end of an afternoon or something. At least I put it aside, and then I don't get back at it for weeks or even months, and it's makes me wonder if you ever will get it, but I hope you do, and in fact I'll probably see that you do. Certainly you don't have any idea that I'm making it, and it isn't real easy to find things to talk about that might be of interest to you, and I suspect that I have deviated enough to where you'll skip over a lot of these information on this tape pretty briefly, and hopefully there's some that you'll be real interested in. The thing about Hap Holliday's death that I always dwelled on was how utterly useless it was. The war was over. And everybody recognized that fact, except for a few fanatical people like this German colonel who commanded the men that set up that ambush. And fanatical. But it's just as unexplainable now as it was 40 years ago when it happened. I'm glad to make this tape, and I hope you find it interesting, and probably should have tried to do it long ago. It just never occurred to me until you sent me the book, The Time for Trumpets. And so I can't think of a whole lot more. This has been a rather unusual summer. We've had a lot of hot weather. In June and July, our grain crops, of course, we're vitally interested in the grain crop. We're in the grain business in no uncertain manner. My brother and I bought an existing business here in Grangeville in 1951, 34 years ago now. And after 14 years as a partnership with my brother, I bought him out, and for a few years ran it entirely alone. I have 4 sons, and when I was overseas in the war, I had been married a couple of years and had a daughter who was about 2 years old when I got back. Hap and I compared baby pictures a lot when we were in the war. When I got back, my oldest son was born in 1946, the fall of 46. That would be David, and after that we had Joe and Paul and John. We had the 4 sons. Our daughter, who was the baby during World War II, died about 15 years ago at age 27 of a cancer, and the boys have all married, and well, my daughter had a boy 2 years old when she passed away, and that was our oldest grandchild, and we now have 12 grandchildren and are expecting another one in another month or so. 3 of the boys are actively in the business with me. That would be David, Joe, and Paul. Joe and Paul live here in Grangeville, where I live, and David lives down at Clarkston, which is just across the river from Lewiston, Idaho, where we have a barge loading station on the Snake River. Since we've been in the business here, why, the Corps of Engineers have dammed up the Columbia and the Snake River and made it totally navigable from Lewiston, Idaho to Portland and Astoria. So we load 3,000-ton barges at our plant at Wilma, which is in Washington, just across the river from Clarkston, and then we have the upcountry grain elevators at Kamei, Idaho, and at Craigmont, Idaho, and at Grangeville, Idaho, where our main corporate office is. So we're vitally interested in the grain crops, and of course the grain programs that the federal government are involved in. We do lots of business with the federal government in their storage and loan programs, which are their price support system to the farmer. I'm now, well, in August, I was 71 years old. I kind of think I was a little bit older than Hap, but I'm not sure. Really doesn't matter. We were certainly the same generation. I guess on listening to these tapes, it seems as though I get an awful lot of pauses and extra ahs and ahs, and I hope that you bear with me, and I do hope that this tape will be of interest to you. I want to again emphasize that if you ever get into the area of Spokane, Washington, or Boise, Idaho, anywhere in between here, I'd be real happy if you'd stop in and see us. The fellow, I guess when you come to the end of your natural life, the way there are a few things that stay with you, and certainly my combat experience and the friends I made during that time are of still real importance to me. So with that, I think I'll sign off and get these tapes off to you. Again, I most appreciate the Time for Trumpets and thoroughly enjoyed reading it. And just recently we have acquired a video cassette recorder for our TV, and we have started on a series of A World of Battle. There are 27 tapes of that, and we've watched the first 5, and we'll be getting the balance of them as we find time to watch them. Each tape takes about 50 minutes, so it requires some time. In any event, I hardly recommend them. They're almost as good as A Time for Trumpets. Sometimes get to be quite depressing. War is depressing, but certainly a major historical fact. So, Bob Holliday, I hope you enjoy these tapes, and with that I'll sign off. Postscript. Here it is, December 20th, 1985, and I just opened my mail and got your very welcome Christmas card. The picture of you and your family, and a real pleasure to receive it. Almost brought tears to my eyes to think that these are Hap Holliday's grandchildren. With all the grandchildren I have, I should realize that he could have some too. But I don't think of Hap in that way. When I think of Hap, we were both young, and in my memory of Hap, we still are young. Anyway, thanks for the Christmas card, and I think you will see that I now intend to get this off. One of the reasons that I've delayed sending it, one of our boys happened to hear part of it, and he was going to copy the tapes because they got a lot of enjoyment out of it too, or he did. This has never been done, and I'm not too concerned. If we need another one, I can make another one for them. I wish that you would be sure that the judge gets to hear these if he has the time. And we will be watching the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, and we will also be looking forward to perhaps seeing you in May in St. Louis when the 561st get together. I'm not sure whether you're on the mailing list of the new coordinator of our reunions. If you're not, drop me a line and I'll be sure that you get the information. I I think it's the 16th, 17th, and 18th of May in St. Louis. June and I are getting all ready to go down to Mesa, Arizona, where we've rented a trailer in a recreational vehicle park, along with a bunch of cousins and people from North Dakota. We intend to have a Stegner reunion there the middle of February, and we will be there all of January, February, and March. With the reunion in St. Louis in May, it looks like this will be the year for reunions. In any event, good luck, Bob Holliday, and I will get this off. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.